Hi, everyone. Welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm Julia, and today I want to share with you a powerful story about a real English learner who never gave up. Before we start, let me ask you a few quick questions. Have you ever struggled to stay motivated while learning English? Have you ever felt like giving up when progress felt slow? Have you ever wondered how successful learners finally reached fluency? If so, this story is for you. Today, I want to tell you about a man named Daniel. He grew up in a small town where nobody spoke English. For him, English was something distant, something you only heard in movies or online. But when Daniel turned 16, everything changed. His school announced a new exchange program. The best students would get a chance to study in the United States. Daniel was excited, but he had a big problem. He could barely say a few English words. At first, Daniel laughed and told himself, "There's no way I can compete with people who already speak English." But one day, he saw a video of a boy from another country who learned English by listening to podcasts, music, and by talking to himself every day. That video changed something inside him. He thought, if he can do it, maybe I can too. So Daniel made a promise to himself. He would learn English every single day, even if it was only for 10 minutes. He started watching cartoons with subtitles. Then he listened to English songs and tried to write down the lyrics. Sometimes he made mistakes. Sometimes he understood nothing, but he never stopped. Slowly, he noticed small improvements. He could understand phrases from movies and recognize words on social media. That little bit of progress made him smile. After a few months, he decided to practice speaking. At first, he was terrified. He didn't want anyone to hear his accent or his mistakes. But one day, while walking home, he looked at his reflection in a shop window and said out loud, "I can do this." From that moment, he started talking to himself in English, describing what he was doing, what he saw, what he felt. It sounded funny, but it worked. His pronunciation improved and he became more confident. Then came the big moment. Daniel applied for the exchange program, which included an English interview. He was nervous, his hands were shaking, but he remembered how far he had come. During the interview, he made a few mistakes, but he smiled, spoke slowly, and showed his passion for learning. A few weeks later, Daniel received an email that changed his life. He had been accepted. Arriving in the United States felt like entering another world. Everything was in English, the signs, the conversations, even the jokes. At first, Daniel felt lost because native speakers talked too fast. But instead of giving up, he saw every moment as a chance to learn. He carried a small notebook in his pocket, and every time he heard a new word or phrase, he wrote it down and repeated it later. One of his teachers noticed his effort and told him something he never forgot. Fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about using what you know with confidence. That sentence changed him. Instead of memorizing grammar rules, he focused on real conversations. He made friends, joined a debate club, and practiced English in natural situations. One day, during a class presentation, he had to speak in English for 5 minutes in front of everyone. His heart was racing. At first, his mind went blank, but he took a deep breath and remembered all the times he had practiced alone. Slowly, he began to speak. He shared his story of learning English. When he finished, the class applauded. That moment made him realize he had not only learned English, but he had transformed his life. Years later, Daniel became an English teacher himself. He often told his students, "Don't wait to feel ready. Speak now. Make mistakes proudly because mistakes mean you are learning." So, what can we learn from Daniel's story? The most important lesson is this: consistency beats perfection. You don't need to study for hours. What matters is doing something in English every day, listening, reading, speaking, or even thinking in English. Let me ask you again. What is stopping you from improving your English today? Fear of mistakes? Lack of time? Feeling too old or too late? Remember Daniel. He didn't start with perfect pronunciation. He didn't have expensive materials. He didn't live in an English-speaking country. But he had determination, and that made all the difference. When Daniel returned home from the United States, his real learning continued. His family didn't speak English, but he used that as a chance to practice. In the mornings, he greeted his mother in English. At first, she laughed, but later she began answering in simple English. Their breakfast routine turned into a fun language game. He helped his younger sister with her homework by asking questions instead of correcting her. He encouraged her to think in English, not just memorize answers. With friends, he created an English-only Friday. It was awkward at first, full of mistakes and laughter, but after a few weeks, everyone improved. His friend Maria once said, "I can read English, but I'm too shy to speak." Daniel told her, "The more you speak, the more comfortable you will feel." English is not a test, it's a tool. Slowly, Maria began using English phrases during casual chats, when they went shopping, ordered food, or talked about movies. Daniel's group soon grew. More friends wanted to join because it felt natural and fun. They would go to a cafe every Saturday morning and order everything in English. The waiters sometimes looked surprised, but that didn't stop them. They practiced greetings, small talk, and polite expressions. A simple conversation like, "Can I have a cup of tea, please?" or "Do you have something without sugar?" became a way to build confidence. One day, Daniel noticed something interesting. When they spoke English together, their body language changed. They smiled more, used hand gestures, and spoke with excitement. It was as if speaking English helped them express a new version of themselves, more open, more curious, and more confident. He realized language learning was not only about communication, it was also about discovering who you could become through another language. Daniel also began using English when talking about his daily life. For example, when cleaning his room, he would describe what he was doing. "I'm folding my clothes," or "I need to clean the desk." When cooking, he practiced recipes aloud in English, like, "First I chop the onions, then I add some salt and pepper." These small habits made English feel like part of his life, not just a subject. One day, his cousin Emily visited him. She lived abroad and spoke English fluently. At first, Daniel felt nervous to talk to her in English because he thought she might judge his mistakes. But Emily was kind. She told him, "Daniel, your English is really natural. You speak with confidence." That simple compliment gave him new motivation. It showed him how far he had come from those early days of learning alone in his room. Soon, Daniel's entire social circle began to include English in some way. His friends sent English memes, jokes, and movie clips in their group chat. They shared phrases like, "What's up?" or "Long time no see," and used them casually. They even started celebrating English movie nights every month. Each person brought snacks and they watched a film with English subtitles. After the movie, they discussed the story, what they liked, what they learned, and what expressions they noticed. Through these daily moments, English became more than a goal. It became a habit, a way of life. Daniel realized that when English is part of your personal world, your family, your friends, your free time, learning becomes effortless. You no longer have to push yourself to study. You just live in English. One memorable evening, Daniel invited some friends to his house for dinner. His mom cooked traditional food, and his friends came over with excitement. The house was filled with laughter and conversation. Daniel wanted everyone to practice English, so he started light-hearted conversations. "What's your favorite food?" he asked. One friend replied, "I love spicy food, but not too spicy." Another said, "I like desserts more than real meals." Everyone laughed. Even Daniel's mom joined in. She tried to ask, "Do you like my cooking?" Her accent was thick, but everyone clapped and smiled. That night showed Daniel that language can bring people together, even when it's not perfect. It's not about flawless grammar. It's about connection, sharing, and understanding. Later, as everyone left, Daniel sat by the window thinking about how his journey had changed him. English had started as a dream, a challenge, but now it was part of who he was. It allowed him to connect with people from different cultures, watch movies without subtitles, read books that once felt impossible, and even help others learn. He often reminded his students and friends that real progress comes from using English in simple, everyday ways. He said, "If you only study English for exams, you'll forget it. But if you live it, talk to your family, joke with your friends, describe your day in English, it will stay with you forever." From that point, Daniel's life revolved around natural English experiences. When he walked his dog in the morning, he listened to English podcasts. When he met his friends for lunch, they greeted each other in English first. When he texted his sister, he sometimes wrote in English just for fun. These little moments kept his skills sharp and his motivation alive. He also learned the importance of being patient. Sometimes he still made mistakes or forgot a word, but he never felt embarrassed. He would simply smile and say, "Let me try that again." That positive attitude inspired everyone around him. His friends began to see that English didn't need to be perfect. It needed to be practiced. Slowly, the people around Daniel, his family, his friends, even his neighbors started using English phrases too. It became a community habit. They would say things like, "See you later," "Have a nice day," or "Take care." Even the children in the neighborhood began greeting him in English. Daniel couldn't help but feel proud. He realized that learning English had given him more than just a language. It had given him confidence, discipline, and new relationships. It taught him how to keep trying, even when things were difficult. And more than anything, it showed him that English can be part of ordinary life, in family dinners, friendly chats, and small moments that matter. Every evening when Daniel looked back at his day, he felt thankful for those early struggles, because without them, he would never have discovered the beauty of learning through real life. English was no longer something he studied. It was something he lived, shared, and enjoyed every single day. Daniel's daily routine continued to grow more natural and filled with English in every small moment. Every morning when he woke up, he made a habit of speaking a few sentences aloud in English. He would say things like, "It's a beautiful morning," or "I feel ready for the day." These simple phrases helped him start each day with confidence. His mother often laughed hearing him talk to himself, but he explained that speaking out loud helped him think faster in English. Over time, his family understood that it was more than practice. It was part of his mindset. After breakfast, Daniel usually went for a short walk around his neighborhood. He loved these quiet moments because they gave him a chance to listen to English podcasts or short stories. Sometimes he repeated sentences after the speaker to practice pronunciation. Other times, he tried to summarize what he heard in his own words. He would say quietly, "The speaker talked about healthy habits," or "The story was about friendship." These small speaking moments became like a daily English gym for his brain. On weekends, Daniel often spent time with his neighbors. They had a small group that enjoyed chatting over tea in the garden. One of his neighbors, Mr. Smith, was an older man who had lived abroad for many years. He loved to share stories about his time in London. Daniel enjoyed listening to him because it felt like an English lesson mixed with life experience. Mr. Smith once said, "When I first moved to England, I couldn't understand the local accent, but I learned that listening carefully was the key." Daniel smiled because he could relate. They often discussed topics like weather, family, and traditions, all in English. Sometimes, Daniel invited his friends over to cook dinner together. It became one of their favorite group activities. They used the time to practice English while preparing meals. One friend would read the recipe in English, saying things like, "Chop the tomatoes," or "Boil the pasta for 10 minutes." Daniel noticed that when English was part of a real activity, everyone learned faster. They laughed, asked questions, and corrected each other naturally. Even simple phrases like, "Can you pass me the spoon?" or "This smells amazing," became opportunities to speak. One evening, while cooking, Maria accidentally dropped a bowl and everyone laughed. She said, "Oh no, my clumsy hands again." Daniel replied, "That's a good phrase, clumsy hands." They all repeated it, turning the mistake into a language moment. It reminded them that learning English doesn't always need to be serious. It can happen through fun, laughter, and mistakes. Daniel also liked to visit his aunt and uncle on Sundays. They lived about an hour away, and during his bus ride, he listened to English news to keep his vocabulary growing. When he arrived, his little cousins ran to greet him. They loved practicing English with him because he made it into games. He would say, "Okay, tell me 5 things you can see in this room in English." The kids shouted words like chair, table, window, and cat. It became their favorite family game. During lunch, Daniel's uncle asked him about his work. Daniel explained in English that he was teaching part-time and helping others with language learning. His uncle, who didn't speak much English, asked what a certain word meant, and Daniel translated it. Soon, even his uncle tried saying a few English phrases like "nice to meet you" and "how are you?" Everyone laughed when he pronounced them with a strong local accent, but they appreciated his effort. One evening, Daniel and his friends decided to go on a weekend trip to the countryside. During the drive, they played a game called Describe and Guess. One person would describe something in English without saying its name, and the others had to guess. For example, Maria said, "It's something you use in the morning to brush your teeth." Everyone shouted, "Toothbrush!" They played the game for hours, laughing and learning new words at the same time. When they reached the countryside, they rented a small cabin near a lake. The air was fresh and the atmosphere peaceful. Daniel loved moments like these because he could relax while still using English in real life. That evening, as they sat by the fire, they talked about their goals. Daniel said, "I want to become fluent enough to teach English around the world." Maria said, "I want to travel without being afraid to speak English to strangers." Their friend Lucas added, "I want to watch English movies without subtitles." Everyone nodded. It was inspiring to hear how English was opening new dreams for each of them. The next morning, they cooked breakfast together, still speaking in English. They used simple everyday sentences like, "Can you turn on the stove?" Or, "Where's the butter?" It didn't feel like studying. It was just communication. Daniel realized that when language becomes a natural part of daily life, it no longer feels like hard work. It becomes part of your identity. Later, they visited a local market. Daniel encouraged everyone to speak English while shopping. When buying fruit, Maria said to the seller, "How much is this?" Daniel quietly helped her with pronunciation, and the seller smiled, replying in simple English. These short exchanges built confidence. It showed that even in small daily tasks, practicing English was possible. Back home, Daniel continued these habits with his family. Sometimes during dinner, he would ask questions like, "What was the best part of your day?" His mother would answer in her language, but Daniel gently encouraged her to use English words she knew. Soon, the whole family was mixing English into their conversations naturally. They laughed when they made mistakes, and Daniel always reminded them, "We don't need perfect English, we just need to try." He also began keeping a daily English journal. Every night before bed, he wrote a few sentences about his day in English. Some days it was simple, like, "I met my friend today and had coffee." Other days it was longer. "I helped my sister with her project and we spoke in English for 10 minutes. This habit helped him think clearly in English and improve his writing skills. His younger sister started copying him. She wrote small notes to him in English like, "Good morning, brother," or "Thank you for helping me." Daniel always replied in English, and they began leaving each other messages around the house. These little exchanges made their home feel full of positive energy and motivation. One day, Daniel's family hosted a small barbecue with friends and neighbors. Everyone gathered in the backyard, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. Daniel introduced an idea. "Let's try to speak English during lunch." Some people were shy, but he made it easy by starting with fun questions. "What's your favorite drink?" Or, "Do you like spicy food?" Soon, laughter and conversation filled the space. Even people who had never spoken English before started saying small sentences. It turned into a joyful mix of languages, with everyone learning from one another. After lunch, they played a short role-play game. Daniel pretended to be a waiter, and his friends acted as customers in a restaurant. They practiced ordering food and making polite requests. Sentences like, "Can I have a sandwich, please?" and "I'd like a glass of water" became part of their natural speech. The kids loved joining in, pretending to order ice cream and juice. It was playful learning at its best. Later that evening, when everyone left, Daniel sat quietly and thought about how powerful everyday English could be. You don't need to travel abroad to practice. You can use English with your family, your friends, your neighbors, anywhere, anytime. You can describe what you're doing, ask simple questions, or even play games. It's not about big words. It's about small moments that keep you connected to the language. As days went by, English became woven into Daniel's life completely. When he went grocery shopping, he made mental lists in English. "I need eggs, milk, and bread." When he met friends for coffee, they greeted each other in English before switching back to their native language. When he watched TV, he tried to repeat interesting phrases aloud. All these little habits added up to something powerful. He often reminded his students, "Don't wait for a perfect moment to practice. The perfect moment is now. In your kitchen, with your friends, while cleaning your room, or during your walk. English can live in every moment of your day." Daniel's connection with English kept deepening as his daily life continued to evolve. Each week brought new chances to use the language naturally with family, friends, and even strangers. One morning, while helping his mom prepare breakfast, Daniel used English phrases for simple tasks. He said, "Let's make some toast," and "Can you pass me the butter?" His mother smiled and replied, "Butter? Yes." It became a light-hearted moment, and even though she didn't always understand the words, she enjoyed trying. Daniel realized that these little moments made English part of their family bond. Later that day, Daniel went grocery shopping with his sister Lily. While walking through the store, he challenged her to name everything they picked up in English. When he grabbed apples, he asked, "What is this?" Lily answered proudly, "Apple." He picked up rice and asked again, "What about this?" She said, "Rice." Soon they turned the entire shopping trip into a game. At the checkout, Daniel whispered, "Let's try to greet the cashier in English." Lily hesitated, but said softly, "Hello, how are you?" The cashier looked surprised, but smiled warmly. Daniel saw the pride in his sister's eyes, and it reminded him how encouragement can make anyone feel confident in learning. In the evenings, Daniel often met his friends at a local park. They liked to walk and talk while watching the sunset. It became their special time to relax and practice English conversation without pressure. Sometimes they discussed light topics like favorite movies or weekend plans. One evening, Daniel asked, "If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?" Maria said, "I would love to visit Japan because I'm interested in their culture." Lucas said, "I want to go to Canada. I heard people there are very kind." They continued sharing dreams, laughing at each other's ideas, and practicing English naturally without realizing it. Daniel noticed that talking about dreams and personal interests helped his friends remember vocabulary better. It was easier to use English when the topic felt emotional or fun. So he started suggesting themes each time they met. Favorite foods, school memories, childhood games, or funny experiences. These real-life topics made their practice feel more meaningful. One evening, I invited everyone to my house for a friendship dinner. I told them, "We'll speak only English tonight, but don't worry, it's not a test." I decorated the table with candles, soft music, and homemade dishes. The dinner began with friendly chatter. Maria said, "This food smells amazing." Lucas replied, "You're a great cook." I laughed and said, "I learned from my mom." We talked about daily routines, work stress, and plans for the weekend. Even when someone forgot a word, others helped kindly. By the end of the dinner, everyone felt comfortable expressing themselves in English. After everyone left, my mom asked me, "Why do your friends speak English here?" I smiled and said, "Because it helps us grow and it brings us closer." She nodded thoughtfully, realizing that language learning was not just about studying, it was about connecting. During the next week, I spent an afternoon helping my neighbor, Mr. Lee, fix a garden fence. His grandson, Tom, joined us. Tom was learning English at school, so I turned the task into a short lesson. I said, "Tom, this is called a hammer. Can you say that?" Tom repeated, "Hammer." I pointed at the nails and said, "And these are nails." Soon, Tom started naming tools on his own: wood, paint, brush. Mr. Lee watched proudly as Tom practiced words naturally through real action. That evening, when I returned home, I told my family about the experience. My father, who was usually quiet, said, "You teach everyone English, but do you still study yourself?" I laughed and replied, "Yes, every day. I read books, watch videos, and talk with my friends. English is like a muscle. You have to use it to keep it strong." My father nodded in agreement. The next morning, my routine continued. I had coffee while listening to an English podcast about daily habits. The speaker talked about gratitude and motivation. Inspired, I wrote in my journal, "Today I'm thankful for my family, my friends, and my progress." Writing in English made me reflect deeply. It wasn't just language practice, it was a form of self-expression. In the afternoon, I met Maria at a local cafe. We ordered coffee and sat by the window. Maria said, "I started listening to English songs every morning. It helps me wake up in a good mood." I replied, "That's a great idea. Music is a fun way to learn." We discussed lyrics, favorite singers, and funny song meanings. Sometimes we paused to look up new words together. I realized that English could be mixed into any interest: food, music, sports, or travel. A few days later, I visited my grandmother. She was elderly and didn't speak English at all, but she was curious about my teaching. I taught her a few words like hello, thank you, and good night. She laughed and repeated them proudly. Then she said, "Maybe I'm too old to learn." I shook my head and replied, "You're never too old. Every word you learn is progress." She smiled and said, "Then I'll keep trying." That moment touched me deeply because it reminded me that learning is a lifelong journey. One Sunday afternoon, my friends gathered at my house to celebrate my birthday. They brought gifts, snacks, and balloons. Everyone decided to keep speaking English for fun. Maria said, "Happy birthday, Julia." Lucas added, "Make a wish before you blow the candles." They sang the birthday song in English and took pictures. Even my little sister joined, saying, "Happy birthday, big sister." It was a mix of joy and learning, a perfect example of how English could fit into real emotions and memories. The group spent the rest of the evening playing English games. One game was called Describe It. One person described an object without naming it, and others guessed what it was. I said, "It's cold, sweet, and you eat it in summer." Everyone shouted, "Ice cream." Another game was Two Truths and a Lie. Each person said 3 sentences, and others guessed which one was false. These games brought laughter while improving vocabulary and speaking confidence. After the celebration, I reflected on how much English had changed my friendships. We now shared jokes in English, sent each other short text, and recommended movies or podcasts. It was not forced, it was part of our connection. I thought about how language had created a new space for creativity and understanding among us. The following week, my friend Lucas invited me to his house for a family gathering. His parents wanted to practice English too, so I happily joined. We spoke a mix of English and our local language. Lucas's father asked, "Julia, how do you say this in English?" pointing to a traditional dish. I explained, "It's called rice pudding." Everyone repeated it with laughter. We continued chatting about food, hobbies, and traditions. It was simple but meaningful, real English in real life. Later that evening, as I walked home under the warm streetlights, I felt grateful. English had become more than just a language. It was now a bridge connecting people from different generations, backgrounds, and personalities. I remembered my early days of practicing alone and compared them to now, surrounded by voices, laughter, and conversations in English. The next morning, I went jogging with my friend Maria. We often used our jogging time to practice English expressions. Maria said, "I'm out of breath." I laughed, replying, "You need more training." We also described what we saw, like, "The sky looks beautiful today," or "The air feels fresh." These small phrases turned ordinary exercise into language practice. When we finished, we sat on a bench near a pond, breathing in the calm air. I said, I used to be afraid of speaking English in public." Maria nodded. "Me too. But now it feels natural." I smiled and said, "That's what happens when you make English part of your life. It grows with you." That evening, I helped Lily with her school project. It was about describing her favorite family member. She wrote, "My sister Julia helps me learn English. She is kind and funny." I laughed softly when I read it. It was a simple line, but it meant a lot to me. It showed how my small daily efforts had inspired my sister too. Before bed, I thought about how English now surrounded me every day in the kitchen, the park, the market, and in the laughter of my friends. It wasn't something I had to study anymore. It was something I lived, shared, and enjoyed with the people who mattered most to me. After finishing breakfast, I sat in the living room with a cup of coffee, scrolling through my phone. My younger sister, Emma, came and sat beside me. She looked curious and said, "Julia, you always study English in the mornings. Doesn't it get boring?" I smiled and said, "Not really, Emma. I actually enjoy it. It's like exercising my brain. Every time I read or listen to something new, I learn a word or phrase that helps me understand people better." Emma nodded thoughtfully. I guess that makes sense. I want to improve my English too, especially my speaking. But I don't know where to start. I said, you can start with small things. For example, try speaking in English for 10 minutes every day. Talk about what you did, what you will do, or something that happened at school. She laughed and said, "That sounds easy, but I'll probably forget what to say." I told her, "That's fine. The goal isn't perfection. It's practice. You'll make mistakes, and that's part of learning." Later that afternoon, my friend Alex came over. We hadn't seen each other for a few weeks, so we talked for a while about work and life. Alex works at a travel agency and meets people from different countries. He said, "You know, Julia, learning English has really helped me at work. I can explain things clearly to foreign customers, and they trust me more because of that." I nodded and replied, "That's one of the biggest advantages of knowing English. It connects people. You can talk to anyone from anywhere in the world." Alex smiled and said, "I remember when I first started learning, I was so shy to speak. I used to worry about making mistakes all the time." I told him, "Everyone goes through that phase. Even I did. But the secret is to stop thinking too much about grammar when you talk. Just focus on getting your message across. The more you speak, the more natural you sound." In the evening, my parents joined us for dinner. My mother asked, "Julia, how was your English podcast going?" I told her, "It's going great. I've been getting messages from people around the world who are listening to it to improve their English." My father smiled proudly and said, "That's wonderful. When I was young, I wish we had something like podcasts or online lessons. We only had books and radio shows." I laughed and said, "Yes, times have changed now. We have so many resources, videos, online conversations, even AI tools to practice speaking." My mother said, "I think the best way to learn is by using English in real life, not just studying it from a book." I completely agreed. I told her, "That's exactly what I tell my listeners too. Real conversations, even small ones, help more than memorizing long lists of words." After dinner, I went for a short walk with my friend Lisa. She had just come back from a family gathering and was telling me how funny her uncle was. She said, "You know, my uncle doesn't speak English well, but he always tries. He mixes words, sometimes even creates new ones, but he never feels embarrassed." I laughed and said, "That's the right attitude. Confidence is more important than perfection." Lisa nodded. "I think so too. Sometimes people are so afraid of making mistakes that they stop talking altogether." I replied, "Exactly. The moment you stop practicing, your progress slows down. It's like any other skill. If you don't use it, you lose it." She thought for a second and said, "You're right. Maybe I should start joining those English conversation groups again." I said, "That's a great idea. Speaking with others helps a lot. It's fun, and you can learn from their mistakes too." When I got back home, my cousin Sarah called. She's been living abroad for 2 years. She said, "Hey, Julia, I was thinking of visiting next month, but you know what? My English has improved so much since moving here." I said, "That's amazing, Sarah. What helped you the most?" She said, "Honestly, living with native speakers. You have no choice but to use English every day at the grocery store, at work, with friends. It forces you to think in English." I replied, "That's the best way to learn. When you live in an English-speaking environment, your brain starts to adapt naturally." Sarah said, "Yes, and I noticed something else. When I stopped translating everything into my native language, I began to understand faster." I agreed and said, "That's a big step. Thinking directly in English helps you speak smoothly. Translating in your head slows you down." She said, "Exactly. Now I even dream in English sometimes." I laughed and said, "That's when you know you're fluent." The next morning, I met my neighbor, Mrs. Brown, while watering the plants. She's an elderly lady, very kind and talkative. She said, "Good morning, Julia. I heard your podcast yesterday. You were talking about learning through stories, right?" I smiled and said, "Yes, that's right. Stories help people connect emotionally, which makes learning more effective." She said, "I agree. When I was a teacher, I used stories to teach grammar and vocabulary." "Students remembered them better than dry exercises," I replied. "Exactly. When something touches your emotions, it stays in your memory." Mrs. Brown said, "You know, language is not just about words. It's about culture, feelings, and people." I nodded and said, "That's so true. When you understand the way people think and express emotions in English, you start to sound more natural." She added, "Yes, and the best learners are those who listen carefully. Listening builds understanding." I said, "That's why I always tell my listeners to listen actively, not just hear. Notice tone, rhythm, and the way people use expressions." Later in the day, I met my friend Kevin at a cafe. He's been trying to improve his English pronunciation. He said, "Julia, I can understand everything when I read or listen, but when I speak, I feel my accent is too strong." I said, "Having an accent is normal. It's part of your identity. The goal isn't to sound perfect, but to be clear and confident." Kevin smiled and said, "That's good to hear, but still, I want people to understand me easily." I replied, "Then focus on intonation and stress. Listen to how native speakers say sentences, not just individual words." We practiced a few sentences together, repeating them until they sounded smooth. Kevin said, "Wow, this really helps. It's like music. I can feel the rhythm." I said, "Exactly. English has a natural rhythm, and when you get used to it, your speech becomes more fluent." He added, "I'll try shadowing. That's when you listen to a recording and repeat it right after." I said, "Yes, that's one of the best techniques. It improves your pronunciation, speed, and confidence." As the day went on, I realized that every person I had spoken to, Emma, Alex, my parents, Lisa, Sarah, Mrs. Brown, and Kevin, had something in common. They were all trying to use English in real life, not just study it. That's what makes the difference between learners who improve fast and those who get stuck. It's not about how much grammar you know, but how often you use the language in your daily life. That night, after a long and busy day, I sat in the living room with my parents and sister. We were all tired but happy to be together. My father turned on the television, but the sound of the news filled the room and felt too serious. So my mother said, "Let's turn that off and just talk for a while." We never spend enough time just chatting as a family anymore. I agreed right away. "Yes, Mom, we're always busy with work, school, and phones. It's good to just sit and talk." Emma smiled and said, "Okay, but what should we talk about?" My father laughed softly and said, "Anything. Tell us something interesting that happened at school today." Emma thought for a moment and said, "Well, today our teacher asked everyone to give a short speech in English about our favorite hobby. I was so nervous, but I did it." My mother clapped her hands proudly. "That's wonderful, Emma. What did you talk about?" Emma smiled shyly. "I talked about cooking. I told my class how I learned to make pancakes and why I love spending time in the kitchen." I laughed and said, "You should have told them about your first pancake disaster when you burned half of them." Everyone laughed and Emma said, "Hey, that was my first try. Now I can make perfect ones." We all enjoyed that moment. My father then looked at me and said, "Julia, when you were her age, you also had to give speeches in English, didn't you?" I nodded. "Yes, but I was very shy back then. I remember trembling while holding my paper. My English wasn't good and I was afraid of making mistakes." My mother added, "But later you realized everyone makes mistakes. What matters is trying and learning. I said, "That's true. Confidence comes with practice." She turned to Emma and said, "When I first moved to this city, I couldn't speak English at all. I used to get nervous when someone asked me for directions. But little by little, I learned by talking to neighbors and watching English shows." I smiled at her and said, "That's a perfect example of learning naturally. You didn't sit with a book, you learned from real life." After some time, we heard the doorbell ring. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Parker, who often came by in the evenings to chat. She brought a small basket of cookies and said, "I baked too many. Please take some before I eat them all myself." We laughed and invited her to join us. Mrs. Parker sat down and said, "I heard you talking about learning English. You know, when I was younger, I also learned another language, French. It was hard, but talking with real people made it easier." My father nodded. "Yes, that's the same with English. Reading and writing help, but speaking with others is what really makes a difference." Mrs. Parker said, "Exactly. And speaking doesn't have to be formal. Even small chats about weather or food help a lot." My mother added, "That's why I always encourage Emma to talk to people politely in English when we travel." Emma said, "Yes, I remember when we went to the beach last summer. I ordered ice cream in English all by myself." Everyone laughed again, and I said, "That's the spirit. Little moments like that build real confidence." Then my phone buzzed. It was my best friend Alex sending a message. "Hey, are you free tomorrow morning? We're planning a picnic at the park." I smiled and said, "That sounds great. I'll come." Emma heard me and said, "Can I come too?" I said, "Of course, it'll be fun." The next morning, we packed some sandwiches, fruit and drinks. Alex arrived with his younger brother Mark and a few of our friends. The park was beautiful, green grass, tall trees, and kids playing everywhere. We spread out our picnic blanket and sat down. Alex said, "I brought my new Bluetooth speaker. Let's play some music." Mark added, "And I brought a frisbee. After eating, we can play a few rounds." While eating, we talked about random things, movies, travel, food, and work. My friend Lisa said, "I've been trying to watch movies in English without subtitles lately. It's hard at first, but now I understand more than before." I said, "That's a great method. When you listen to real conversations in movies, your ears get used to natural English." Alex said, "Yeah, and sometimes I repeat short scenes. It helps me learn expressions." Emma listened quietly and said, "That's what Julia told me to do. I started watching kids shows in English and I can catch new words easily." Lisa smiled and said, "That's smart. Those shows use simple words and clear pronunciation." Alex said, "Yes, and it's fun too. Learning doesn't always have to be serious." We all agreed and laughed. After lunch, we played frisbee. Everyone ran around, laughing, shouting, and joking. When we got tired, we sat on the grass again and I said, "You know, learning English is a bit like this game. The more you play, the better you get. If you never throw the frisbee, you never learn how it moves. If you never speak, you never learn how words flow." Alex nodded and said, "That's a nice way to think about it. Practice is everything." As the sun began to set, we decided to go home. On the way, Emma said, "I really liked spending the day with everyone. I also learned some new phrases just by listening to your friends talk." I said, "See, that's what I mean by learning through real situations. You pick up words naturally." When we got home, my grandmother was waiting in the living room. She smiled warmly and said, "Welcome back. Did you have a nice day?" I said, "Yes, Grandma. It was wonderful. We had a picnic and played games." She laughed and said, "Sounds like a perfect day. You know, when I was young, our fun didn't involve gadgets or phones. We used to gather and tell stories for hours. Emma sat beside her and asked, "What kind of stories, Grandma?" She replied, "Mostly about family, life lessons, and sometimes funny moments. We didn't call it learning, but we learned a lot about people, about kindness, about understanding." I said, "That's true. Stories are powerful. They teach us without us even realizing it." Grandma smiled and said, "And that's the same with languages. If you make it a part of your daily life through stories, jokes, or songs, you learn it easily." Emma said, "So if I tell you a short story every night in English, will you listen?" Grandma laughed. "Of course. That will be our new routine." Later that night, after everyone went to bed, I sat near the window looking outside at the quiet street. I thought about the whole day, the family talk, the picnic, the laughter, the conversations. It all reminded me of one simple truth. English, like any language, isn't something you learn only from books. It grows with you through people, through moments, and through daily experiences. The next day, I went to visit my friend, Kevin, at his house. He was helping his younger brother, Tom, with his homework. I sat beside them and said, "Hey, Tom, what are you working on?" Tom said, "I have to write about my favorite person in English, but I don't know how to start." I smiled and said, "Start with something simple, like, my favorite person is. Then describe why." Tom nodded and said, "Okay, I'll try. My favorite person is my dad, because he tells funny stories." Kevin laughed and said, "See, that's a great start. Simple, but clear." I said, "Exactly. Writing in English is like speaking. Just be natural. Don't worry about big words. Focus on expressing your thoughts." Tom smiled and continued writing. Kevin added, "You know, Julia, I think your advice works for everyone, even for adults who want to improve their English." I said, "That's the goal. Learning doesn't stop at any age." Kevin looked thoughtful and said, "Do you ever feel like English connects people in unexpected ways?" I said, "All the time. It connects families, friends, even strangers. A simple conversation can create understanding between people from different cultures." He smiled and said, "That's true. Maybe that's why I enjoy listening to your podcast. It feels like you're just talking to a friend." I laughed softly. That's exactly what I want, to make learning feel like friendship. When people relax and enjoy the conversation, that's when they learn best. The following morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window. I made myself a cup of tea and decided to sit on the balcony to enjoy the quiet. My younger sister, Emma, soon joined me, carrying a notebook. "Emma," she said, "I want to try writing a short story in English today. Can you help me?" I smiled and said, "Of course, Emma. Let's make it fun. We can write about something that happened yesterday or maybe an imaginary adventure." Emma thought for a moment and said, "Let's write about our picnic at the park yesterday." I nodded. "Perfect. Start with a simple sentence like, 'Yesterday we went to the park.' Then add details about what happened." Emma wrote slowly, saying aloud as she wrote, "Yesterday we went to the park, we ate sandwiches and played frisbee. The sun was shining and the air was fresh." I praised her. "Great job. You described everything clearly. Now try adding a sentence about your feelings." Emma thought for a few seconds and wrote, "I felt happy because I played with my friends and laughed a lot." I said, "Excellent. See how your sentences are getting longer and more natural? Writing like this helps you speak English too, because you start thinking in full sentences." She smiled and said, "I never thought writing could help me talk better." I replied, "It really does. It's like practicing your voice in silence. Your brain gets used to English structure without pressure." Later in the day, my friend Alex called and asked if I could join him at his house. He said he had a small gathering with his cousins and wanted to practice English together. I agreed and went over in the afternoon. When I arrived, Alex's cousins greeted me warmly. Some were shy, but most were excited to speak English. Alex said, Let's start by introducing ourselves in English. Tell us your name, age, and favorite hobby. One by one, they spoke. Hi, my name is Sarah. I am 12. I like drawing. Hello, I'm Mike. I'm 14. I like football. Each introduction was simple but effective. I encouraged them, great, try to add one more sentence about why you like your hobby. Sarah said, I like drawing because I can create new worlds. Mike said, I like football because I feel strong and fast. Everyone clapped, and I said, see, you're already telling stories in English. That's how you improve naturally. After introductions, Alex suggested a fun game. He called it English Detective. Each person wrote a short sentence about something they did in the past week. Then the others had to guess who wrote it by asking questions in English. For example, someone wrote, I helped my grandmother in the garden. Others ask, did you plant flowers? Or, did you water the plants? After a few guesses, the person revealed themselves. Everyone laughed and practiced speaking naturally. When it was my turn, I wrote, I cooked dinner for my family yesterday. Alex asked, did you make something sweet or salty? I replied, salty. I made pasta and salad. Everyone smiled and said, wow, you can cook. It was amazing how a small, simple activity became an English lesson. Later, we decided to have a small snack together. Alex's mom made tea and sandwiches. While eating, we spoke casually in English. This tea tastes good, I said. Yes, it's sweet, but not too sweet, Alex's cousin replied. Sarah added, I like sandwiches with cheese and tomato. These small sentences, spoken naturally, helped everyone gain confidence. I realized that daily life conversations, even about food, can be excellent practice. After the snack, we went outside to play a simple game of follow the instructions. I was the first leader. I said, walk to the tree, touch the trunk, then jump 3 times. Everyone followed my instructions while speaking short English sentences. I touched the tree. I jumped 3 times. Laughter filled the garden, and it became clear that movement plus speaking made the learning experience fun and memorable. Later in the evening, Alex's grandmother joined us. She had limited English, but wanted to participate. I taught her a few simple sentences like, hello, how are you? And I like cookies. She repeated them slowly but proudly. I said, see, you don't need perfect English to communicate. Every word counts. Her smile and small attempts inspired everyone. After leaving Alex's house, I walked home reflecting on the day. Using English naturally with friends, even in casual and fun ways, made it feel less like studying and more like living the language. I realized that even small interactions like describing what you're doing, asking questions, or sharing a story help English become part of daily life. The next morning, my family decided to cook breakfast together. My mom said, let's make pancakes today. I said, great, I'll help by reading the recipe in English. Emma giggled, you always want everything in English. I said, it's practice. Don't worry, it'll be fun. While cooking, I read sentences like, mix the flour and milk and pour the batter onto the pan. Emma repeated after me, saying, mix the flour and milk. My mom smiled and said, even small sentences can teach children confidence. After breakfast, we decided to clean the house together. I said, let's speak English while we clean. For example, I'm sweeping the floor, or I'm dusting the shelves. Emma laughed. Okay, let's try. Soon everyone was saying sentences like, I am washing the dishes, or I am folding the laundry. My mother said, I never thought cleaning could be so educational. We all laughed and continued, realizing that daily chores can become natural English practice. In the afternoon, my friend Lisa called. She said, "Hey, Julia, do you want to go to the library with me? I want to find some English storybooks for beginners." I agreed, and we went together. At the library, we picked books with simple sentences and colorful pictures. Lisa said, "Reading aloud is so helpful. It makes me remember words better." I said, "Exactly. Reading, listening, and speaking together improve fluency much faster." While reading, Lisa and I practiced pronunciation. "The cat jumped over the wall," I read aloud. Lisa repeated, "The cat jumped over the wall." We laughed when we stumbled on tricky words, but we kept going. We also discussed the story, asking questions like, "Why do you think the cat jumped?" And "What would you do in this situation?" Discussing stories in English created a deeper understanding, not just vocabulary memorization. On our way home, Lisa suggested, "Let's stop by the park. I want to tell a short story to the children there in English." We found a small group of kids playing and sat near them. I said, "Hello, I have a short story to tell. Listen carefully." The children leaned in excitedly. We told a simple story about a brave little squirrel who helped his friends. Afterwards, we asked the kids, "What did the squirrel do first, and who was his friend?" They answered in English as best as they could, and we praised them for trying. That evening, I sat with my family again. My father asked, "Julia, you spent a lot of time with friends today. Did you practice English?" I smiled and said, "Yes, every conversation, every story, and even helping kids practice was English practice." My father nodded. "That's what I mean. Life itself can teach you a language if you use it actively." Emma then said, "I want to try something new tomorrow. Can we speak only English for breakfast?" I laughed and said, "Sure, even if we mix a few words, it'll be a good start." My mom added, "It's good for everyone to join. Speaking English together strengthens confidence and makes learning natural." Before bed, I reflected on the day again. Watching friends, family, and neighbors use English in small, real-life moments reminded me that learning doesn't need a formal classroom. It's about noticing opportunities around you. Whether cooking, cleaning, reading, playing, or simply talking, every small interaction adds to vocabulary, pronunciation, and confidence. The next morning, I prepared a short list of daily expressions for Emma and my mom. Phrases like, "Can you help me?" "I am thirsty," and "This is delicious" were written on small cards. We placed them around the house, in the kitchen, near the sofa, and by the door. Emma laughed. "It's like living in an English house." I said, "Exactly. The more you see and use English in daily life, the faster you learn." During breakfast, we practiced the phrases. My mom said, "This is delicious," holding up a pancake. Emma said, "I am thirsty," reaching for her juice. I added, "Can you help me?" when passing the sugar. It became playful, natural, and very effective. Later, I received a call from Alex. He suggested, "Why don't we plan a small weekend trip together with friends and family? We can speak English all day while exploring." I immediately agreed. That's a fantastic idea. It will be like an English immersion in our daily life. Alex said, "Yes, and everyone, kids, parents, and friends can join. It will be fun and educational at the same time." The weekend arrived, and we were all excited about the small trip Alex had planned. Early Saturday morning, I helped pack sandwiches, fruits, and drinks for everyone. Emma carefully packed her notebook and some crayons, saying, "I might write or draw while we are outside." I smiled. "That's perfect. You can even practice English by writing short sentences about what you see." Alex picked us up with his car, and soon we were driving toward a small lake surrounded by trees. The ride was filled with chatter in English. Alex asked, Julia, have you ever visited this place before? I replied, no, I haven't. I'm excited to explore. Emma added, I can't wait to see the ducks. I want to draw them. Along the way, we all practiced simple English sentences like, look at that tree. The sun is shining and it's a beautiful day. When we arrived, everyone helped set up a picnic blanket near the water. Alex's cousins started skipping stones, and Emma ran to feed the ducks. I said, Emma, what are the ducks doing? She replied, they are swimming and eating the bread. I nodded. Good, you described it perfectly in English. Even Alex's younger brother, Mark, joined in and said, the water is cold but fun. It was wonderful to see everyone using English naturally while playing and exploring. After a while, we sat down to enjoy the sandwiches and fruits we had brought. Alex suggested we each say a few sentences in English about what we enjoyed most about the trip so far. Emma said, I like feeding the ducks. They are cute and funny. Sarah said, I like skipping stones on the lake. I made 3 skips in a row. Mark added, I like running on the grass. It feels soft and fresh. Everyone laughed and shared their little stories. After eating, we decided to go on a short nature walk along a trail near the lake. I led the group and pointed out different things, saying, look at that bird in the tree. It has a red head. Emma said, I see it. It is small and pretty. Alex added, and look at the flowers. They are yellow and white. By describing the surroundings in English, everyone started noticing details they would normally ignore. The conversation flowed naturally and nobody felt pressured. At one point, Alex suggested a mini English challenge. He said, let's take turns describing something we see, and others must ask at least one question about it in English. I started, I see a big rock near the water. It is smooth and gray. Emma asked, is it heavy? I replied, yes, I think so. You wouldn't want to lift it. Sarah said, can we sit on it? I laughed, yes, but be careful. The exercise became a fun way to practice speaking and asking questions in English. Later, we sat down on the blanket again and played 2 truths and a lie in English. Each person shared 3 sentences about themselves with 2 true and 1 false, and the others had to guess which one was the lie. Emma said, I have a pet hamster, I can swim well, and I have never eaten pizza. We all guessed, laughed, and helped her speak each sentence clearly. It was exciting to see how games made English practice enjoyable. As the sun began to set, Alex suggested we do a reflection activity. He said, let's each say 3 sentences in English about what we learned or enjoyed today. Emma said, I learned new words like skip and smooth. I enjoyed feeding the ducks. Mark said, I learned how to describe things in English. I enjoyed running with my friends. Sarah said, I learned how to ask questions about what I see. I enjoyed skipping stones. Everyone shared their thoughts. I added, I learned that practicing English in daily life while having fun makes it much easier to remember. On the way home, we continued speaking in English. Alex asked, Julia, what will you write in your journal tonight? I replied, I will write about our trip and the new words I learned, like skip, smooth, and soft. Writing about experiences helps me remember better. Emma said, I will draw the ducks and write a short story about them. I smiled. Perfect. That's a great way to combine English practice with creativity. When we returned home, my mother said, It looks like you all had a wonderful day. Did you speak English most of the time? I nodded. Yes, Mom. We tried to use English naturally while talking, playing, and sharing stories. She smiled and said, "That's the best way to learn. Fun and learning together make it easier to remember." In the evening, I helped Emma organize her notes and drawings from the day. She said, "Julia, I really like describing things in English today. It feels like I can see words in my mind when I talk." I replied, "Yes, Emma. That's how English becomes natural. The more you connect words with real experiences, the faster you improve." Later, my father suggested a small activity for the whole family. He said, "Let's share one thing we are grateful for today in English." My mother said, "I'm grateful for our family and this peaceful day." I said, "I am grateful for the chance to use English with friends and family." Emma said, "I'm grateful for the ducks and the picnic." This short exercise not only practiced English, but also created a warm family moment. The next day, I met Lisa at the library again. She said, "I found a storybook about a little fox who learns to be brave. I think we can read it together and discuss it in English." I agreed. We read aloud, taking turns, and discussed the story afterward. Lisa said, "I like how discussing stories in English helps me remember the plot and words." I said, "Yes, and it also makes you think about how sentences are formed. You learn grammar naturally, without feeling like it's a lesson." After the library, we went to a nearby cafe to continue chatting. Lisa said, "Julia, sometimes I feel nervous speaking English in public, even though I know words." I said, "That's normal. Confidence comes with practice. The more you speak in real situations, the less nervous you feel." She nodded and said, "I'll try speaking English more often with friends and even strangers when I can." I replied, "That's perfect. Start with small interactions like ordering food, asking for directions, or complimenting someone. Every word counts." Later in the week, I decided to teach Emma a few new phrases for daily life. We created flashcards with phrases like, "Can you pass me the salt? I need some water. I like this song. Let's go outside." We put them in different places around the house. Emma laughed and said, "It's like living in an English-speaking home." I replied, "Exactly. The more you see and use these phrases naturally, the faster you learn." During breakfast the next morning, we practiced the phrases. Emma said, "I need some water," as she poured juice. My mother said, "Can you pass me the salt?" And Emma handed it to her. I said, "I like this song." While music played softly in the background, my mother smiled and said, "This is such a fun way to learn English together." That afternoon, Alex invited me to his house for a small gathering. His cousins joined, and we played a simple storytelling game. Each person said one sentence, and the next person continued the story. We laughed as the story became funnier and sillier. For example, one sentence was, "The cat wore a red hat." And the next, "It danced with the chicken in the garden." Everyone spoke English naturally, laughed, and practiced creativity. Later, Alex suggested another game describing objects without naming them. I said, "It's round, it can be eaten, and it is red." Emma guessed apple. Alex said, "Yes, that's correct." The activity helped vocabulary and speaking confidence in a playful way. In the evening, I returned home and spent time with my grandmother. She said, "Tell me something interesting in English today." I told her about the storytelling game. She repeated a few phrases slowly, smiling. I may be old, but I can still learn, she said. I laughed and replied, absolutely. You can learn at any age. English is like a bridge connecting generations. The next morning, my parents suggested we go grocery shopping together. I said, let's make it an English practice trip. We can name everything we see and describe it. Emma and my mother agreed. In the store, we said sentences like, these apples are red and sweet. I need 2 loaves of bread, and the milk is cold. Even the cashier smiled when we spoke English while paying. After returning home, I wrote in my journal about the trip, the picnic, and all the small moments we used English. Naturally, I realized that daily interactions, even simple ones like cooking, walking, or shopping, are powerful opportunities to practice English. When learning is part of life, it doesn't feel like studying. It feels like living. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to spend some quiet time reading an English storybook. Emma came into the room carrying her favorite notebook and said, Julia, can I sit with you and read too? I smiled and said, of course. Let's read together and then talk about the story in English. We picked a short story about a little bird learning to fly. As we read, I encouraged Emma to read aloud whenever she felt confident. The little bird flapped its wings and jumped from the nest. She read slowly. I said, good. Try emphasizing flapped and jumped to make it sound natural. She repeated it, and her voice became clearer and more confident. Then I asked, what do you think will happen next? She thought for a moment and said, I think the bird will try to fly far and meet other birds. I smiled and said, exactly. You're predicting the story in English, which is a great way to improve comprehension and speaking. Later, my friend Alex called and suggested we meet at the park. He said, let's have a small English practice session while enjoying the weather. I agreed, and Emma wanted to join too. At the park, Alex brought his younger sister, Mia, and a few friends. Everyone sat on the grass, and we decided to play a storytelling circle. Alex started. Once upon a time, there was a brave little fox who wanted to find treasure. Mia added, the fox went into the forest and met a wise owl. Emma said, the owl told the fox to be careful and look for clues. I added, the fox thanked the owl and continued on the path, feeling excited and nervous. Each sentence built on the previous one, and everyone spoke in English naturally, laughing when sentences became funny or unexpected. After the story, Alex suggested a new game called English Detective. Each person described an object around the park without naming it, and the others had to guess. I said, it is green, it grows tall, and it has many leaves. Emma guessed, a tree. Alex added, yes, correct. Another round. I said, it is round, yellow, and shines in the sky. Mia shouted, the sun. Everyone laughed, and the game became a fun way to practice descriptive language. Later, we went for a short walk near the lake. I encouraged everyone to describe what they saw in English. Emma said, the water is clear and calm. Alex said, I see ducks swimming near the shore. Mia said, the flowers are colorful and pretty. By speaking about real-life objects and scenes, we practiced vocabulary naturally without thinking about grammar rules. We also practiced short conversations. I asked Emma, if you want to feed the ducks, what do you say? She replied, can I feed the ducks, please? I said, perfect. That's polite and clear. Alex's younger cousin asked, how do I ask someone for directions? I taught him, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the playground? He repeated it and smiled proudly. Real-life practice made English useful and fun. After some time, we had a small picnic near the lake. We used English to talk about food and feelings. Emma said, "The sandwich is tasty." Mia said, "I like the apple. It is sweet." Alex said, "I feel happy today because we are playing and learning English together." I added, "That's the best way to learn. Connecting English with emotions makes it easier to remember." Later, we played a game of follow the instructions in English. I said, "Jump 3 times and touch your toes." Everyone followed my instructions and spoke sentences like, "I jumped 3 times and I touched my toes." It was a playful way to practice verbs, actions, and sentence structure naturally. After the games, we sat under a tree and shared short stories about our week. Emma said, "I helped my mother bake cookies and I learned new words in English while following the recipe." Mia said, "I cleaned my room and described everything in English to my brother." Alex said, "I watched an English movie and repeated sentences to practice pronunciation." I said, "See how using English in daily life, even for small activities, builds confidence and fluency?" On our way back home, Emma asked, "Julia, can we do this every weekend?" I smiled. Yes, we can. Regular practice with friends makes learning fun and effective. We agreed to plan more activities like storytelling, games, and mini English challenges every weekend. The next day, at home, I decided to involve the whole family in a small activity. I said, "Let's have an English morning routine. We will speak in English while doing simple tasks." My mother started, "I am making tea." Emma said, "I am brushing my teeth." I said, "I am feeding the cat." Even small sentences in daily life created natural opportunities for practice. Later, I helped Emma with her homework in English. She had to write a paragraph about her favorite day. I guided her, start with, "My favorite day is," and describe what you did, who you were with, and how you felt. Emma wrote slowly and read aloud. "My favorite day is my birthday. I played games with my friends. I felt happy and excited." I praised her. "Excellent. You used full sentences and expressed your feelings clearly." In the evening, our neighbor Mrs. Parker came by. She said, "Julia, I heard you were helping children practice English. Can I join you for a short story session?" I said, "Of course. Let's tell a story together." We gathered Emma and a few of her friends in the living room. Mrs. Parker started, "Once upon a time, a little rabbit wanted to find a magic carrot." The children continued the story in English, adding sentences like, "The rabbit ran through the forest and it met a kind turtle." Everyone laughed and spoke naturally, learning vocabulary and sentence structure through storytelling. After the story, we played a simple vocabulary game. I held up an object like a spoon and asked, "What is this?" The children answered in English, "Spoon." Then I asked, "What do you do with it?" And they replied, "I eat with it." Mrs. Parker added, "It's wonderful to see them using English naturally and confidently." Later that night, I reflected on the day. It was clear how using English in daily situations, whether storytelling, playing, cooking, or talking with friends, helped everyone improve without feeling like formal study. Small activities, consistent practice, and real interactions built vocabulary, confidence, and fluency. The next morning, I met Alex and his sister Mia again. Alex suggested, "Let's plan a small visit to the library and read stories in English aloud. Then we can discuss them." We agreed. At the library, we picked short story books with colorful illustrations. Reading aloud helped with pronunciation, and discussing the story afterward improved comprehension. Emma said, "I understand the story better when I talk about it in English." Mia added, "I remember new words faster when I use them in sentences." After the library, we went to a cafe for a short break. While sipping tea, we practiced ordering food in English. I said, "I would like a sandwich, please." Emma said, "I would like juice, please." Alex added, "I would like a coffee, please." The waiter smiled, and it felt like a real-world practice session. Small daily interactions like these helped everyone gain confidence. In the evening, my grandmother asked me to tell her a short story in English. I shared a story about a clever fox and a kind mouse. She repeated a few sentences slowly, smiling, and said, "Even at my age, I can learn new words." I replied, "Absolutely, Grandma. Learning English can happen at any age if you use it naturally in life." Later, we decided to organize a mini English challenge at home. Each person had to describe something they did that day in English. Emma said, "I drew a picture and wrote a sentence about it." My mother said, "I cooked lunch and described each step in English." My father said, "I watered the plants and said the names of each plant in English." I said, "I visited the library and discussed stories in English." Everyone laughed and enjoyed practicing without pressure. The following morning, we continued our daily English routine. During breakfast, we described what we were eating, how it tasted, and our plans for the day. Emma said, "The pancakes are sweet and soft." I added, "I like the juice. It is fresh and cold." My mother said, "I am enjoying the tea. It is warm and soothing." This natural conversation reinforced vocabulary and speaking skills effortlessly. Later, Alex called and said, "Julia, let's plan a small weekend outing to the local garden. We can use English while exploring and observing nature." I agreed. That's perfect. Using English outside in real situations makes learning real and fun. We invited friends and family, and everyone agreed enthusiastically. At the garden, we walked along the paths describing flowers, trees, birds, and insects. Emma said, "The butterflies are colorful and delicate." Mia said, "The flowers are pink, yellow, and red." Alex said, "The pond is calm and the fish are swimming slowly." By describing real-life observations in English, everyone practiced fluency naturally, connecting words with experiences. We also played a simple English game at the garden called "What Am I?" I gave clues like, "I am small, I hop, and I like carrots." Emma guessed, "A rabbit." Alex gave clues, "I am yellow, I shine in the sky, and I give light." Mia guessed, "The sun." The game was entertaining and educational, helping everyone think in English actively. After a picnic lunch, we sat under a tree and shared short reflections in English. Emma said, "I learned new words and enjoyed the flowers." Mia said, "I practiced speaking in English and had fun." Alex said, "I realized that using English naturally every day makes it easier to remember." I added, "Yes, when English is part of life, learning becomes effortless and enjoyable." The following morning, I woke up early to a bright and sunny day. Emma came running into the room, holding her notebook and said, "Julia, can we write about yesterday at the garden? I want to practice English." I smiled and said, "Absolutely, Emma. Let's write what we remember and then read it aloud together." She sat down, and I helped her start. Yesterday, we went to the garden. The flowers were colorful and the sun was shining. Emma continued, "We saw butterflies flying over the flowers. I felt happy because I was with my friends." I encouraged her. "Great! Now add one more sentence about something you learned." She wrote, "I learned the names of some flowers in English, like rose, tulip, and daisy." I said, "Perfect. Writing about experiences helps you remember words and speak more confidently." Later, Alex called and invited me to his house to meet his family. He said, "Let's have a small English conversation practice with everyone." I agreed, and Emma wanted to come too. When we arrived, Alex's parents and cousins were waiting. Alex suggested starting with introductions. Each person said their name, age, and favorite hobby in English. Lily, Alex's cousin, said, "Hi, my name is Lily. I am 12 years old. I like painting." Ben said, "Hello, I'm Ben. I am 10 years old. I like soccer." Emma added, "I am Emma. I like drawing and writing stories." I said, "I like reading and helping friends practice English." Everyone clapped and smiled. Speaking about hobbies naturally introduced new vocabulary and expressions. After introductions, Alex suggested a fun game called English Detective. Each person wrote a sentence about something they did during the week, and others had to guess who wrote it by asking questions in English. One sentence was, "I helped my grandmother in the garden." The others asked, "Did you plant flowers or did you water the plants?" Finally, the person revealed themselves and everyone laughed. When it was my turn, I wrote, "I cooked dinner for my family yesterday." Alex asked, "Did you make something sweet or salty?" I replied, "Salty. I made pasta and salad." Everyone smiled, and we continued guessing and asking questions in English. The game made speaking natural and fun. After the game, Alex's mom prepared a small snack. While eating, we practiced English conversation casually. "This sandwich is tasty," I said. "Yes, it is soft and fresh," Lily replied. Emma added, "I like the apple juice. It is sweet." These small sentences during daily activities helped everyone speak confidently and comfortably. Later, we played Follow the Instructions in English. I said, "Touch your toes, then clap 3 times." Everyone followed the instructions, saying aloud, "I touch my toes and I clap 3 times." The game combined movement and speaking, making learning active and memorable. After the games, we sat on the grass and shared stories from our week. Emma said, "I helped my mother bake cookies, and I learned new words in English while following the recipe." Mia said, "I cleaned my room and described everything in English to my brother." Alex said, "I watched an English movie and repeated sentences to practice pronunciation." Sharing personal experiences encouraged everyone to use English naturally. On the way home, Emma asked, "Julia, can we do this every week?" I smiled. "Yes, we can." Regular practice with friends and family makes learning English fun and easy. My mother agreed. It's a great idea. Using English in daily life builds confidence and fluency. After the story, we played a vocabulary game. I held an object like a spoon and asked, "What is this?" The children answered, "Spoon." Then I asked, "What do you use it for?" And they said, "I eat with it." Mrs. Parker smiled. It's wonderful to see them using English naturally. The next morning, Emma and I picked a new storybook at the library. We read aloud and discussed it afterward. Emma said, "I understand better when I talk about the story in English." I replied, "Yes, discussing stories helps you remember words and sentence structure naturally." After reading, we went to a cafe. While ordering, we practiced polite English. "I would like a sandwich, please," I said. Emma said, "I would like juice, please." The waiter smiled, and it felt like real-life English practice. Small daily interactions built confidence and fluency. In the evening, I shared a short story with my grandmother. She repeated some sentences slowly and said, "Even at my age, I can learn new words." I replied, "Absolutely. Learning English can happen at any age if you use it naturally in life." Later, we organized a mini English challenge at home. Each person described something they did that day in English. Emma said, "I drew a picture and wrote a sentence about it." My mother said, "I cooked lunch and described each step in English." My father said, "I watered the plants and said the names of each plant in English." I said, "I visited the library and discussed stories in English." Everyone laughed and enjoyed practicing without pressure. The following morning, we continued the English breakfast routine. We described what we ate, how it tasted, and our plans for the day. Emma said, "The pancakes are sweet and soft." I said, "I like the juice. It is fresh and cold." My mother said, "I am enjoying the tea. It is warm and soothing." Daily conversations strengthened vocabulary naturally. Later, Alex called and suggested a weekend visit to the local garden. We invited friends and family. At the garden, we described flowers, trees, birds, and insects in English. Emma said, "The butterflies are colorful and delicate." Mia said, "The flowers are pink, yellow, and red." Alex said, "The pond is calm and the fish are swimming slowly." Observing and describing nature made English practice real and enjoyable. We played a game called "What Am I?" I gave clues. I am small, I hop, and I like carrots. Emma guessed, "A rabbit." Alex gave another clue. I am yellow, I shine in the sky, and I give light. Mia guessed, "The sun." The game helped everyone think and speak in English actively. After a picnic lunch, we shared reflections. Emma said, "I learned new words and enjoyed the flowers." Mia said, "I practiced speaking in English and had fun." Alex said, "I realized using English in daily life makes it easier to remember." I added, "Yes, when English is part of life, learning becomes effortless and enjoyable." Later, in the evening, we prepared a small dinner together. Everyone described the actions in English. Emma said, "I am chopping vegetables." My mother said, "I am stirring the soup." I said, "I am setting the table." Small tasks became natural opportunities to practice speaking English fluently. After dinner, we watched a short family movie in English. During the movie, we paused occasionally to ask questions. "What just happened?" or "Why did the character do that?" Emma said, "It helps me understand and remember words." I added, "Yes, discussing the story while watching makes learning more interactive and effective." Later, we played a quiet game of charades in English. Everyone acted out words or phrases while the others guessed in English. "I'm brushing my teeth," Emma acted out, and we guessed correctly. "I'm riding a bicycle," Alex acted out, and everyone joined in laughter. Games like this combined movement, speaking, and fun, making learning memorable. The following morning, I suggested a nature walk in our neighborhood. We described everything we saw in English. Emma said, "The clouds are white and fluffy." I said, "The tree has green leaves and tall branches." My mother said, "The birds are singing in the morning." Observing real life and describing it in English naturally reinforced vocabulary. At home, we decided to practice English while doing chores. I said, "Let's speak English while cleaning." Emma said, "I'm dusting the shelves." My mother said, "I'm washing the dishes." I said, "I am folding the laundry." Even small daily tasks became useful English practice, and everyone felt more confident. Later, Alex invited us to a small afternoon gathering. We played a storytelling circle. Each person added a sentence in English to continue the story. The story became fun and silly. The cat wore a hat, it danced with a chicken, the dog joined them, and so on. Everyone laughed, spoke naturally, and practiced fluency. After the story, we did a small reflection. Everyone shared one sentence about what they enjoyed and learned in English that day. Emma said, "I learned new words and had fun telling a story." Mia said, "I practiced speaking and listening." Alex said, "I realized that using English in everyday life is the best way to improve." I said, "Exactly. When learning English is part of life, it becomes easy, natural, and enjoyable." The next morning, I decided to start the day with a simple breakfast practice in English. Emma joined me at the table, holding her notebook. "Julia, let's say what we are eating in English today," she suggested. I smiled. "Great idea. I'll start. I am eating a slice of toast with butter." Emma replied, "I am drinking orange juice. It is sweet and fresh." My mother added, "I am having tea. It is warm and relaxing." Speaking about breakfast in English made it a natural start to the day. After breakfast, Emma wanted to practice writing about daily activities. I said, "Write 3 sentences about what you will do today." She wrote, "I will help my mother clean the living room. I will read a story in English. I will draw a picture of a bird." I said, "Excellent. Writing your plans in English helps you think in English and use the right words." Later, Alex called and invited us to a small outdoor picnic in the park. We brought sandwiches, fruits, and water. While walking to the park, I encouraged Emma to describe everything we saw. "Look at the tall tree," she said. "The leaves are green and bright," Alex added. "The flowers are colorful. I see yellow and red ones." By observing and describing real things in English, vocabulary and sentence structure became easier to remember. At the park, we played a storytelling game. Alex started, "Once upon a time, a little fox wanted to explore the forest." Emma added, "The fox met a friendly rabbit who showed him the path." I said, "The fox felt happy and curious to see new places." Each sentence built on the previous one, and everyone spoke in English naturally. Laughter and imagination made the learning process enjoyable. After the storytelling, we did a small descriptive game. Alex said, "I am thinking of something in the park. It is green, tall, and has many leaves." "What is it?" Emma guessed. "A tree?" I added, "Yes, describing objects helps practice English without memorizing lists of words." Later, I described, "It is round, soft, and red. You can eat it." Alex said, "An apple." This game encouraged thinking and speaking in English actively. While having our picnic lunch, we continued using English. Emma said, "The sandwich is tasty." Alex said, "The juice is cold and sweet." I added, "I like the fruit salad. It is fresh and healthy." Simple sentences like these during daily meals helped everyone speak English naturally. Later, we decided to do a nature walk around the park. I encouraged everyone to speak in English about what they observed. Emma said, "The birds are singing on the trees." Alex said, "The pond is calm. The fish are swimming slowly." I said, "The clouds are white and fluffy. They look like cotton. Describing the surroundings in English helped connect words with real-life experiences. After the walk, we played a mini game of charades in English. Each person acted out an activity or object while others guessed in English. Emma acted, "I am brushing my teeth," and we all guessed correctly. Alex acted, "I am riding a bicycle," and everyone laughed as they guessed. Games like this helped combine movement, vocabulary, and speaking naturally. Later in the afternoon, we returned home and organized a small English challenge. Each person described something they did during the day in English. Emma said, "I fed the birds and wrote a sentence about them." My mother said, "I baked cookies," and described the steps in English. I said, "I helped Emma read a story in English." Alex added, "I played soccer and described my actions in English." Sharing activities in English reinforced fluency naturally. That evening, we had a family movie night in English. While watching, we paused to discuss the story and characters. I asked, "Why do you think the fox helped the rabbit?" Emma said, "Because the fox wanted to be kind and make a friend." Alex added, "It shows how helping others is important." Talking about movies and English improved comprehension, vocabulary, and confidence. After the movie, we played a reflection game. Everyone shared one sentence in English about what they enjoyed or learned that day. Emma said, "I learned new words and had fun describing things." Alex said, "I practiced speaking and listening in English." My mother said, "I realized using English in daily life makes learning easier." I said, "Exactly. English becomes natural when it is part of life and activities." By using English in everyday life, through storytelling, games, conversations, and simple daily activities, we discovered that learning doesn't have to feel like studying. It becomes natural, enjoyable, and meaningful when it's connected to real experiences and emotions. Small, consistent practices, whether at home, in the park, during meals, or even while doing chores, build vocabulary, confidence, and fluency effortlessly. Speaking, listening, observing, and reflecting in English turns ordinary moments into powerful learning opportunities. Remember, the key is to make English a part of your life. When learning is playful, social, and integrated into daily routines, it stops feeling like a task and starts feeling like living. Keep practicing, stay curious, and enjoy every step of your English journey.